Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Glue Guys episode, the number 13 episode. Insane. And as you can see, our first ever guest on the Glue Guys podcast. Floyd, why don't you start us off, tell the people how you're doing today?
A great day. Woke up and went to the gym, and now obviously get to hop on the podcast with you guys, first guest. So very excited. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Chad, how about you?
Man, we're making history today, so anytime we do that, I feel like it's a good day. I'm glad that Floyd was able to give us some of his time, and I honestly have no idea what he's about to say, so this could either be the best episode ever or the worst. So I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background. You got three Bethel Bruins soccer players in front of you guys. So, you guys from the local area will kind of know, obviously, a hotbed of talent over at 1067 Big Bethel Road. So today we wanted to mainly center our episode, and the reason why we brought Floyd on was because he is a United fan. Obviously, United just got a new manager, and we wanted to really center this episode on what is the next 2 to 3 years going to look like for United with Ruben Amorim. But first, before we get into that, I want to do a little bit of Balon D'or talk because I feel like there's been a lot of discourse around the topic. Floyd, I'll start with you. Obviously, Rodri won the award, and there's been a lot of talk around, the award now doesn't mean anything. How could he win it? Vinny should have won it. There's been a lot of stuff like that. What are your personal thoughts on both Rodri winning it, Vinny not winning it, and what the award overall kind of looks like in the year 2024?
Yeah, so I think that Rodri winning it, it's a deserved award. I think that it really could have went either way with the top two. They both had great seasons. Obviously, with Vinicius winning the Champions League, and Rodri being an integral part of the Manchester City system. And that even goes into your question about how do you think the award is standing nowadays. I think that over the past few years, it definitely has lost a bit of its credibility. But I feel like this year, both of the top two candidates were well deserved, and it really could have went either way. So I'm not too upset to see that Rodri won it.
Yeah, and that's something refreshing to hear. And also, we talked before the podcast, Floyd also said, it's nice to not see it's not just who scored the most goals or, who was the best attacker in the world, which is very good. And then, Chad, how much of that, what people saying, the whole discourse around the award, how much of that is people just pretending that if someone isn't Messi or Ronaldo level, then therefore they're not a deserving winner, they shouldn't have won the award?
Yeah, and this kind of common denominator we've talked about is happening across sports really right now. You talk about soccer with, the Messi, Ronaldo generation kind of easing out. Basketball, you've got the LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry generation easing out. Football, you have the Tom Brady easing out. Those are like all some of the greatest players, if not the greatest, in, LeBron, Brady, and Messi's cases. The greatest to ever play their sport. So, obviously we were spoiled as fans. And so now it's kind of like, what does that next era look like? We're not quite in the peak of, maybe some of these guys. We're not sure if Vinny's hit his peak yet as a player. If Bellingham's hit his peak yet. Haaland and Mbappe even, if they've hit their peak yet. So it's a fun time, but it's also like a period of uncertainty kind of going on.
Yeah, I also think personally, I think it's just more fun this way because if you look at Balon d'Or winners from, let's say, just before Messi and Ronaldo, sort of that, especially 2000 to 2007 range, like you see a new winner every single year, and it's like they truly did go into, a calendar year saying, I don't know who the best player in the world is. It could be Ronaldo Nazario this year, it could be Kaká, it could be Floyd's boy Pavel Nedved, it could be what's his face? The Italian center back whose name is escaping me right now. Cannavaro. Yeah, it could be anybody. And even then, you see like the World Cup bias playing in because if Cannavaro hadn't won that World Cup, there's no way in hell he would have won the Balon d'Or. So I think people are just overblowing the situation. And since we're in this weird limbo of we don't have a clear-cut best players in the world like we've had for the past 15 years. Now people are just freaking out, being like, Vinny can't win it because he's not the greatest player of all time. It's like, relax. Like, these guys, they're going to have, these up and down years. I mean, there could be a guy next year that just has, I'm not saying this person in particular, but it could be in 2026, Kvaradona just has, like, an absolute worldly season where he's, like, 20 and 15 in the league, and Napoli get to a Champions League semifinal, and Georgia get to like some weird World Cup round of 16, and it's like he was probably the best player in the world this year. And I think we should be open to that rather than just saying, did you win the Champions League, and were you the best player on that team? If the answer is yes, then you win it. If the answer is no, then you can't win it. So I think it's become a little bit more subjective, and I kind of enjoy that part of it. So yeah, just wanted to get that out of there because a lot of people have been asking about our thoughts on the Balon d'Or. But moving on to this Man United rebuild, before we even start going into the full thing, Floyd, as a United fan, was it Ten Hag's time? What do you think of the timing of the sacking, and B, well, let's start, was the sacking justified, and then was the timing correct?
Unfortunately, I think that the sacking was 100% justified. Obviously, it was up in the air whether or not he would even return to this season, and they ended up giving him another chance, mostly due to fans wanting to keep him. I was one of the people that wanted to keep him. There's no way you can get rid of him after we win the FA Cup like we did last year. But to be 14th place in the league with Manchester United going into November, nobody's going to keep the job at that point. So I think, unfortunately, it was justified. And as far as the timing, I think that I was a little bit disappointed that they fired him after the West Ham result. Obviously we lost the game, but I thought personally that was kind of one of the games where tactically, he got it right, and I thought the players just didn't finish their chances that match. So it was a bit disappointing to see after that, but I think timing is right as well because it gives obviously our new manager enough time to come in and rescue the season.
Yeah, between the Dalot miss and the bizarre penalty call against United, I thought that was definitely one of the results you put your finger on to be like, there's no way you can say the manager lost this game. So I agree that was a very strange call. Chad, from the outside looking in, kind of what do you say to the people that are kind of chanting, Ten Hag clone when we think of someone like Ruben Amorim, someone coming from not a top 5 European league, who's very dominant in the way that he plays in that league. A, because he has very, very good players that are typically superior to other players in his league, and B, because, you can get away with, quote unquote, a lot more stuff in those leagues than you can having to play against such a tough schedule like you have in the Premier League.
Well, I think, it's kind of funny because there's been so much comparison, obviously, between the two, both of them coming in from smaller leagues, as you said. The thing that's funny about both of them is they actually made their dominance in those leagues the way it is, right? Because before Amorim got to Sporting, they were not, a prohibited title favorite all the time in Portugal. They were, more known as a team that, and really all the Portuguese teams are like this, but they develop players, they send them out to other top 5 leagues when they start to hit their young prime, 19 to 22. You're talking about guys like Trincao. You're talking about guys like Bruno Fernandes, who moved out of there. Pretty sure Pablo Sarabia.
Manuel Ugarte moved out of there.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Ronaldo being the biggest headline that's probably come through their academy. So, but really, Porto and Benfica were seen as the two heavyweights in Liga NOS at that time, and Amorim has just come in and made it his league, basically, right? They won it last year. This year they're flying. They haven't dropped a single point in the league. And after PSV dropping points to Ajax actually yesterday, they're the only team in the top 7 leagues who has not dropped a point yet. So it's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. And that's kind of similar to the way Ten Hag was, right? Before he got to Ajax, they were not a dominant team. They were in the consideration for the top 2 or 3 in the Dutch league, but the Dutch league was going through, cycles, right? It was not a guarantee that Ajax was going to win it, and Ten Hag made it his league. He made it Ajax's league. So, I guess that's a similarity. Maybe not something that United fans are looking to be excited about, but I don't think just because Ten Hag didn't work as the coach that means you all of a sudden have to go to someone who has a completely different profile than Ten Hag. Like, Ethan, we've talked about it kind of in and out, and Floyd, I really want your opinion on this. Talking about, Manchester United need a guaranteed manager, right? A guy who's going to guaranteed come in and be good. was there even that type of manager out there right now? Like, I don't even know what names that could have even been.
Yeah, well, firstly, to add on to what you just said, I think that, a big reason, because initially I had these kind of thoughts as well about, like, he's kind of very similar to Ten Hag, but to add on to what you said, I think the biggest difference between these two is that, like you said, Amorim came in and they hadn't won the league in, over a decade, and he completely changed that team around. But I think with Ten Hag, obviously Ajax maybe weren't their best, but there was like as you said, they were still competing for titles. Sporting were not at all. So I think that's a very slight difference, but it also plays a big part. And to answer as well, I don't think so. That was my biggest concern with us firing Ten Hag initially, was that the manager market right now is very bad. I mean, like, the only two managers that I can think off the top of my head that fit this immediate winner profile would maybe be Zidane and Nagelsmann. And even Nagelsmann already has a job right now, so it'd be difficult to lure him away and get him to Manchester United.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I think Zidane is one of those where he's almost an unrealistic target, because I feel like he's just not. He's only looking to manage France or Real Madrid. Not United are still a hell of a club and a hell of a job, obviously, but I don't even think he would be interested in something like that. So, to say it's only two candidates and then, hey, one of them already has a job, like you mentioned with Nagelsmann, and the other one has no interest, kind of just goes to show how bare the market is right now for top-level managers.
Yeah, and I think me and Floyd multiple times have kind of talked about one of the steps forward for United is sort of throwing certain preconceived notions away, being like, oh, we're United, so we have to get the best manager in the world. Oh, we're United, so we have to win every single game starting today, or else this is a failure. And not saying that it's like okay as a Man United team to like finish 10th this year just because it's Ruben Amorim's first season, but not calling for his head just because you're not immediately in the top four or, God forbid, challenging for the title. Maybe something that United fans have to, accept. Because, I mean, shit, as a guy that heard all these stories, for the first 10 years of my Arsenal fandom about, oh, Arsenal was always competing for the league, and it was either United or Arsenal winning the league, and we deserve to be in the Champions League. And it's like, well, I haven't seen any evidence of that. But even I kind of held those beliefs for a long time when we were finishing Europa League. And I'm like, why aren't we getting better? But, sometimes to have that decline is part of, getting the dead wood out and getting, the culture changed. And what it ended up happening at Arsenal was basically we were like, we're going to lose with 18-year-olds rather than sort of win with 30-year-olds. That's what we're going to do. Not going to say, and if you can already kind of see a profile for that with United, with guys like Garnacho and Mainu and guys like Harry Amos coming through and guys like who are sort of unproven in big leagues. Bringing in those people from the Eredivisie that don't have that top level prevalence. I mean, guys like Lisandro Martinez have become that now, since now he plays for United and has won a World Cup. But when he was first signed, it was like, let's take a chance on this guy from Ajax because, he's worked with Ten Hag before. So I think continuing that profile is going to be huge in this long-term rebuild. And I feel like this has been a broken record ever since Sir Alex Ferguson's left. It's like, well, it's not for this year, it's for next year and the year after. And eventually, a lot of times, United fans and within the club, they get frustrated until they just say, screw it. So what do you think, Floyd, the mindset has to be with Amorim? Like, what kind of timeline are you thinking and what sort of goals? Let's just say for season one, like for the rest of this season, what should his goals be and what kind of timeline are you looking for it to where they get back to top four, to challenging, stuff like that?
Yeah, I agree with that heavily. I think that, obviously, like you said, you just went through that as an Arsenal fan. We're currently going through that with Manchester United. And I think that's a big issue that our club has had, because at these big clubs, the fans play a big impact. When the fans start rumbling about things and start chanting at stadiums and whatnot, puts pressure on the manager a lot more than without us doing that. And I think that you can even look at a few coaches that maybe should deserve a little bit more time, like Ollie and maybe even Mourinho. But like the fans put so much pressure that the board feels forced to make a decision. And I agree. I think that as Manchester United fans, that it's time for us to be a bit more humble. This is not the 90s anymore. It's not the early 2000s. We're not the club that we used to be, and it's going to take a little bit of time for us to get back there. So I think that we need to start being more realistic and backing the managers. As far as the goals for this season, I'm still quite ambitious. I think we've got a great squad. Obviously you see the result against Leicester that this team can play. On paper, it's one of the more solid teams in the league, I believe. So hopefully, with Amorim coming in, I think we can finish at least in a Europa League spot. Because we are in 14th at the moment, but you look at the table, we're not too far off, 6 points off of getting into that top European spot. So I think that's what my goal would be this season with him coming in. If not, maybe 6th or 7th isn't too unacceptable. And as far as the timeline, like I just said, I think it's time for us to just back the manager, no matter what. I think that as far as us back and competing in the top Champions League, competing for league title, it's going to take us at least 2 years at the absolute minimum. So I think that maybe 2 to 4 year window.
Okay.
Floyd, when you say back the manager, are you talking about more time-wise or resources? Because I think one of the arguments with Ten Hag where his tenure maybe wasn't so successful is they kept signing, a lot of these former players or these Ten Hag type signings. And, obviously you look at Antony is always going to be the poster boy for the failed Ten Hag era, right? Because he was his signing, super inflated price. But even some other guys who were more his signing, Mount I feel like was his signing. Casemiro, really his type of signing. How do you feel like, when you said backing the manager, like I said, is that more time or is that signing the guys that he once signed?
No, I was specifically talking about a time period here because I think, ironically enough, a lot of Manchester United fans complain about the Glazers and our ownership, but when you look at all the managers since Sir Alex Ferguson, all of them have been backed with money. Like, us spending money and making signings has never been an issue. So I'm talking purely from a just a time standpoint. Because even Ten Hag, this last window, he spent upwards of 150 million. So I think that just time speaking.
Yeah. And I mean that's going to be a huge factor. All right, let's get into the actual rebuild itself. So I kind of wanted to give the listeners a little bit of background information about Amorim. What's up?
Real quick, just before we dive into the United portion of it, what do we think the next type of job Ten Hag is going to get will be? Like, is he going to be at like a super club type of level? Is he going to be at maybe that step below? I have a job that I already think he's going to get before the end of this season, so I want to hear your guys' opinion. Where do you think his level is for his next job?
Okay, is this going to be a job that's going to open up because someone got fired or because a manager moved? Like to a bigger job?
If I answer that, it'll give it away.
Okay.
Because there's only... Well, I mean, it's a manager who will get fired.
So someone is going to win the sack race? Oh, so he's getting the Arsenal job, according to Twitter?
No Arsenal job. No Arsenal job.
Is it in the Premier League?
No, it's abroad.
Okay.
No.
Oh, the Dortmund job.
That's what you're thinking?
Yeah.
I was thinking
Yeah. That's what I thought you were saying at first, too. I was like, dude, that'd be awesome. West Ham away at Old Trafford.
Yeah, I was going to say, that'd be so ironic if he managed West Ham after getting the sack after them. But, no, I think Dortmund, because two quick reasons, and then we can move on to the United part, because I know I'm the only one that still cares about Ten Hag. I think he has proven that he can develop players, he can develop youth, but the thing is, you can't have him in charge of your transfers. So I think at Dortmund they have a system, and granted, I gotta say, some of their transfer windows recently have been shaky. They've started signing more older guys, which I don't like. But let's just assume that they can maybe have the right transfer recruitment strategy, put that back in place. And Ten Hag just has to worry about coaching the team. I think that's the perfect situation for him. And also, I feel like it's a job where you can get praised pretty easily as the Dortmund manager. Like, if you get to a Champions League quarterfinal or something, and you're starting 2 teenagers, then people will be like, oh, a great youth coach, he's gotten them this far. Then it can propel him to get that next. Then it can propel him to get the Juve job in 3 years or something like that. So
yeah, and
that's.
I also think that with that, it's not too big of a job as far as like managing the press and locker room, because I think that was one of the things that he struggled with at Manchester United. The press conferences were always a little bit questionable from him, and making sure that everyone, with the big egos in the locker room are sorted out. I don't think he'd have to worry about that at a club like Dortmund.
Yeah, I like that shout. The Dortmund job's always like a weird one. I feel like over the past 10 years, I swear like 15 people have held that job. So I don't really know about long-term job security, because it seems like you said, they come in, they make like a Champions League quarterfinals. Like, you know who we should give a chance to? Peter Bosch, like something like that. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I like that job for old Ten Hag. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what his career trajectory is like now. But moving on to the new Man United boss, Ruben Amorim, just kind of going to give an overview of what his typical system is. Now, even I was doing this research, I was kind of thinking, I was like, this is always the best part of any manager coming into the league, when it's like, this is their system, this is how they play, and they're going to do it. And then like 10 games goes by and they get their ass beat, and it's like, you know what I'm never going to do again? Play my system. Okay?
It only took 2 games for Ten Hag. He tried his system for 2 games his first year. They lost both, and then that Liverpool game, he was like, fuck it, we're counterattacking, sit inside.
Yeah, I think it was Brentford away. That one where Onana splits the defenders into Christian Eriksen's feet, and there's no way in hell he was ever going to get that ball. And they went down like 3-0 like so fast. And I was just like, yeah, I don't think this is going to. And so this is his proposed system and what he's been playing at Sporting, at least. A bit more of a flexible 3-4-3. Typically possession-based, but also the ability to break quickly when they can, which for United this year might be more of a possibility with the way sides in the league like to press. One wing-back typically will be very, very attacking, while the other typically supports attacks while not being like a true wing-back all the way up. The midfield is typically comprised of a ball winner and sort of a ball user, someone that connects the defense to attack or transitions the team into attack, whether that be with the ball at their feet or progressing the ball through passes. And then their wide forwards often sort of look like inside forwards or floating tens in clear possession, because the wingbacks will get higher, and so to create that wide space, the outside players typically have to come in field. Back from out of the back, it actually looks like really, really bizarre, because the central center back typically will step into like a midfield type position, whereas the outside center backs will stay, and actually the goalkeeper will get higher, which obviously fits United right now with Andre Onana, one of the best ball-playing goalkeepers we have in the game today. But honestly, it becomes very flexible with who's available. Maybe with United right now, their best ball-playing defender might be Lissandro, or even Harry Maguire, who's good at playing out of the back. Both those guys prefer in back threes, would probably play on the left center back side, so it might more center around that left center back spot. They're playing out of the back. But I think the parts that fit United right now with this new system is, and this sounds like not a fit, but they may have the defenders for it, or they may not, depending on fitness and availability and things like that. Like, I think Luke Shaw can be a really, really good left wing back, or even Harry Amos, who looked really good in preseason. I'm kind of in on him. And then Diogo Dalot at right wing back, I think, can be a really, really good option out there. And I think, if you can put together 3 of their center backs that really would look good in a back 3. I think guys like De Ligt, this might be the rejuvenation maybe of Harry Maguire even, who's always looked good in back 3s. Lisandro Martinez, it might give him a little bit of easier job having to defend in a back 3 rather than just center back. Luke Shaw, again, if he gets fit, has played center back in a back 3. And then obviously Lenny Yoro, I think one of the big questions about him has been his physical prowess, and that's a little less relevant when you're playing in a back 3 as opposed to a back 4. You have a little bit less to deal with as far as center forwards if you're playing on one of those outside center back places. I think Manu and Agarte look really, really good as a starting point in a middle 2. Manu, I think, is kind of just all action. I think he can truly do anything. He's not like at that elite level yet, obviously, because he's so young. But the way he's able to defend, progress the ball, even get on the edge of the other box and be a dangerous creator or goal scorer, I think that's going to be good. And Ugarte is just a really good ball winner. If Casemiro can be rejuvenated at all to what he's been at Real Madrid in the past, I think that can be really good. And even Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes can be guys that can fill in against certain types of teams. Like if you're playing like Ipswich at home, then you could see maybe a midfield of like an Ugarte and Bruno, or like a Mason Mount and Mainu, where it's just a ton of energy and technical ability in the midfield. And then I also really like United's wide talent just in general. I mean, me and Floyd and Chad have actually talked about this a ton. I really love United's wingers. I truly, truly do. I think Garnacho and Ahmad are really, really talented players. And to see them closer to goal rather than just being true wingers, I think is going to be interesting. And again, the name that has to be said when you're talking about the wide talent, Marcus Rashford. I mean, could this be the rejuvenation of him rather than having his heels on the touchline all the time, you know, being an inside forward closer to goal, picking up the ball on the corner of the area rather than on the touchline? Who knows? I mean, he might just have one of those seasons where he just decides, you know what, I'm going to score 10 goals in the second half of the Premier League season, which is very possible for someone of his caliber. The last part that I wanted to say as far as concerns with their new system, maybe depth at the wingback positions, because Mazraoui is not typically like wingback material, I guess. And then left wingback, like God knows what happened to Tyrell Malacia, or even if Luke Shaw is ever going to be fit. And then having that elite striker, which obviously, especially for that level, that's what Sporting has right now. They have the best striker outside of the top 5 leagues, clearly. And so not having that really with United, even though I really do enjoy Rasmus Højlund, I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to be a guy that's going to get them 15 to 20 Premier League goals and be like a consistent presence in there. And Joshua Zirkzee, I haven't watched a ton of them, but I've just heard that he just hasn't really been as much of a good striker. Maybe he can be one of those inside forwards in this new system, but that's kind of laying the groundwork out. So is there anything that you guys wanted to either dispute with what I said, or anything before we get into transfers and what the next couple windows can look like?
No, I think you got it
No?
on there.
Floyd, I do want to ask you, is this the 4th or 5th time that United has gotten a new manager in, and the first headline has been, Marcus Rashford really loves playing for this guy. They're going to build a great relationship.
Probably the 5th.
Because I know for sure Rangnick, Ten Hag, and now Amorim. So I know those 3, no doubt about it. I wasn't really as locked in to United before that. I can't imagine anyone was saying him and Jose were going to be best friends, though. I would have found that one hard to believe. So I'm a little over the Marcus Rashford thing at this point.
Fair.
We need to stop asking the same questions. We know what he is and what he isn't. He's a guy who's going to be awesome 1 out of every 3 years. So it's just what he is. But then again, maybe I'm pessimistic. I don't know.
Oh, come on. Come off the top rope.
I mean, I'm starting to get there as well. I mean, you know, obviously with the players like Marcus Rashford and obviously I was a bit sad to see Scott McTominay go. You know, these are just the fan favorites. It's really difficult to hate these guys, but, you know, I mean, it's starting to get a little bit ridiculous with Rashford. I think that if he doesn't, you know, get back to that form that we saw a few years ago in a 20-goal season in the next year or two, then maybe it's time for us to start looking elsewhere. I mean, especially he just turned 27 as well, so it's not like he's a young guy anymore. So you know,
He's your age.
We are the same age, and they're talking about him as washed. That's crazy.
Yeah. So
I think that segues us perfectly, though, into the transfer part.
Yeah, so let's start off with some transfers out. Some guys that clearly either need to leave or first off, just need to leave, just period. And then guys that need to leave because they're not going to fit this new Amorim system, or they're aging out, or whatever it may be. Whether it be contract exits or exits where you're going to actually get money for them. Who's on the chopping block over the next, let's say, January to the summer window? Let's start with Chad, actually, the non-United fan.
Okay. Pressure's on me first. First off, I do want to say just this kind of goes for outgoings and then the new signings that we're going to talk about. I don't know if January is going to be very busy for United. Like, you know, I get it, new manager in. You're going to say, of course, we're going to want to back him. Like Floyd talked about, you can be critical of the Glazers all you want, but one thing they have done is spent money when they've got in new managers. So that is going to come, but I just don't know if January is going to be the time for it. So talking about outgoings, I think we kind of limited it to about 5 guys. And then I have some contract exits as well. I'll start off with those because those are brief. Lindelof, Johnny Evans, those ones I just don't think. I think Lindelof actually was fine in a back three. Passing-wise, he's probably one of the better center backs that they have. But just his consistent inavailability and lack of being able to be relied on has kind of just made him not deadwood, because he's still a solid player, and I actually think he could get swooped up by a team and do fine for them. But I just don't think that club is going to be united. Johnny Evans, look, I haven't hated his 2 years at United right now, but at the same time, like, they just need to be better than a situation where he's getting some of the most minutes of any center back. So, Floyd, any disagreements with those ones real quick?
I personally would like to keep Lindelof. I think, like you said, that he's got a very good quality playing out of the back, and I think that he's kind of in that range where he's never going to be like a world-class center back, but I think that obviously he goes to a smaller club and like maybe like a just let's use West Ham for example. Obviously, if he goes to a club like West Ham, he can be their starting center back, a great player for them, one of their key players. I think in a club like Manchester United, he kind of plays a good role for us, in the sense that I think you look at the top clubs in the world nowadays, and depth is so important, especially if we're going to be trying to move to this 3-back system. And I think that he's a player that when we need to rotate out, he can come in and do a great job for us.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, like I said, don't necessarily hate the player, but just his availability has been questionable. So now moving on to some guys that I would say are guys that I am pretty strongly looking to get moved out of the club. First one, I hate to say it, got to be Casemiro. He actually has not been as horrible in the past couple of games that I've seen. But the thing with him is, like, he still thinks that he is peak Casemiro. And he plays that way, right? He still plays that way, but you can just tell he's just not as quick, not as instinctual. His passing at this point is just atrocious. I mean, he was never a strong passer. And the year Real Madrid finished third, it was almost single-handedly down to the fact that he could not distribute from the deep-lying position. But he has struggles with his passing ability, and the fact, Floyd, I don't know if you notice it because you probably watch way more United than I do, but the number of times he tries to play that one-touch ball out of, like, the swooping one-touch ball out to the wing, and it's like, dude, you complete those maybe 10% of the time.
He's been watching Bruno play too much.
Yeah, exactly. So he's the first guy on the chopping block. And I've got him going for nothing crazy, really just like $10 million. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a huge market for him. Probably Saudi,
yeah.
Something like that. I guess maybe Italy if we're talking about a top 5 league.
I could see him becoming the best DM in Serie A, and then people being like, actually, it was Ten Hag's fault. Look at Casemiro now.
100%. The other ones I'll rattle through quickly. Maguire, $10 million. Again, kind of the same thing as Lindelof. I don't hate him as a player, but I just think it's kind of time. You want to fully shift out kind of everything from the previous regime and just kind of start fresh. Luke Shaw and Antony I both have going as well. Luke Shaw, you just straight up can't rely on him. Like, cannot rely on him. And the thing is, I think because he's an English player and still at a decent age, I think you can get a fee for him. Like, you can get a real fee, something around $20 million, I would say. Antony the same, I think around $20 million. Ironically, I was talking about Ten Hag going to Dortmund. I think Dortmund is a club that could really use a guy like Antony. So that would be great to see those two link up together as the face of a Dortmund project. And then the last guy on my list was a guy we spent a good amount of time talking about, Marcus Rashford. I just don't. And I have him going for about $40 million. And I got to say, with all my transfers, I went a little bit lower because I really don't feel like United have been a good selling club recently. They haven't been able to extract really good value. I mean, look, totally different circumstances, but the money they got for guys like Greenwood, Van de Beek literally going on like a free with like an option for maybe a couple million. And, guys like that, like, I feel like that is like kind of, and Ethan, it's funny because it's kind of been the same as Arsenal. Like in that period right before they got to where they are now. You know, you talk about the Aubameyang going on a canceled contract, right, to Barca and stuff like that. So, guys like Lacazette going to Lyon for,
and somehow becoming the best striker in the league.
Yeah.
Can't get a minute for a team that finished 6th, but then in the Prem, but now he's scoring like 20 every year in Liga. And the Van de Beek sale was for an initial fee of $500K, which could later rise to $9.1 million due to various additional bonuses and sell-on fee. So total, if every single thing works out, then it'll be $10 million for someone that probably played how many? Hey Floyd, if you had to guess how many games total he played for Man United, what would you say? All comps.
Probably about 10. I genuinely cannot think.
No, he had to be at least 30.
The first season, he somehow made 36 appearances.
He's had a lot of injuries as well. And even
So it was 62 total.
That's crazy. I think he's a player that, like, even when he would come on, like, you wouldn't even notice. I can't think of a time where I've been here's Donnie, he's doing something.
I say it's 62 appearances. I would love to know how many of those were those 5-minute cameos, like at the end of a game. Yeah. So Chad, as of right now, for his outs, got Victor Lindelof and Johnny Evans on contract exits. Casemiro and Maguire both leaving for 10 mil each. Luke Shaw and Antony leaving for 20 mil each. And then probably the biggest name sale of this would be Rashford to 40 million. Chad, if you had to give a guess, like what do you think Rashford for 40 million kind of looks like? Do you think that's that PSG move that we've been hearing about for 5 years, or do you think it's something within England to where it's like he's moving to like a Brighton or something like that?
To be honest with you, I think the way the market is now, like the past 18 months it's been, I think there's more chance of English players
going abroad. Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't, like, there have been a lot. Obviously the PSG links, like you said, those have been going on for literally 5
ever since he scored that penalty against them, basically. Ever since that day, he's been linked with PSG.
Yeah, so I can see that. Weirdly, I've heard a lot of links to Marseille actually recently, so I know they're trying to like
reunite them. Reunite them.
Trying to come on as the next big club in France. So maybe. I actually think and maybe this is just. I feel like anyone that fails in the Prem, you can just go to Italy. Like I think. But the thing is, we laugh about it. Like, would he be better than
Christian Pulisic?
Yeah, like we've seen Rashford have much better seasons than Pulisic. Like,
and now he's like the best winger in the league somehow.
Yeah, like even for a club like Juve, like you can't tell me he's not more proven than Conceição, who I love, but the dude's played
Tim Weah.
Season. Yeah, Weah, who actually scored a nice goal for him a little bit ago. And then Kenan Yildiz, who's like 5 years younger than Floyd somehow. Like when they've got those guys as their attack, and Vlahovic, who's been linked to leave for 3 straight.
Ever since he signed, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, Floyd. What do you think? Like, what's your read on the next move for Rashford? Because I really didn't answer the question at all.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I think the most likely one would be PSG. I was also thinking myself about a Juventus move, maybe. Maybe Milan don't really play with wingers. Definitely Juventus. Maybe if he was staying in the Premier League, I don't think that's right, and I'm thinking more of like a Newcastle, somewhere like a club like that. I think he'd be a perfect fit if he was to leave us for like that kind of like Marseille, Newcastle profile of a club that's kind of up and coming and trying to propel themselves into like being consistent top performer.
I will say though, I would be very interested to see him play in a front two with Lautaro. Like, I feel like that would be a bitch to deal with, being like, hey, we got Lautaro and Rashford in a front two against us today.
The thing is, though, I just don't think he's better than Marcus Thuram.
Yeah, but
like,
I just don't. With the form he's been in this season, I don't think he
Yeah.
Marcus Thuram in the Euros was like maybe the worst player I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, he honestly was worse than that Georgian striker that they had that was knocking in goals somehow, some way. I mean, I was just like, I was literally, because I don't really watch, and Don, I've talked to Chad about this a lot, but it's like I don't really watch like continental European soccer. I just don't. I really only watch the Premier League, so my only real exposure to a lot of these guys that play on the continent is just like the Euros and the World Cup. And so like I heard Marcus Thuram, so I was so excited to see him. And this dude was just like he was just like around the pitch for 60 minutes, knocking into people and handing the ball to the other team and missing chances. I was just like, Jesus, this is the guy I've had to hear about for the past 3 years.
Yeah, he was horrible in the Euros. I watching him every single time. I was wondering how he was staying on for so long.
Him and Kolo Muani was just like, see, this is why I don't trust anyone outside of the Prem. But Don, so we have Chad's exits. How do yours? Let's start with yours that are the same. Again, we got Lindelof, Evans, Casemiro, Maguire, Shaw, Antony, Rashford. Which ones of those do you definitely 100% agree with?
You know, I think that we agree with the majority of them. I think the only difference is like how much our valuation of the players would be. As far as I agree with Maguire, I agree with Casemiro, and I agree with Antony. The only thing is a bit different for the valuation for me. I think Maguire, England international at times can be their best center back. I think he's had a good career. I think we can definitely get, especially if we're selling him within the Premier League, I think we can get at least 20 million from him. Same with
Only real quick, Floyd. The only thing, he's going into the last year of his contract, so that's why I think I cut it down a bit.
Okay, that makes sense.
We just for the record, we did just see Mason Mount get moved for 40 in the last year of his contract when he wasn't even playing for England. So
Fair enough.
Casemiro, kind of the same thing. I think that we could really move on to Saudi. This may be a bit outrageous, but I think we can get at least around 30 million for Casemiro. I think that
maybe
with the resume he's had, I think that we can definitely get a Saudi club to overpay for him easily. I agree with Anthony as well. He's got to go. There's nothing more to say besides that. Like, he's got to get out of the club. There's no way this guy is playing for Manchester United for another year. And I think we can get around 20, 25 million for him as well.
So the defense for Floyd's valuation of Casemiro. Do you remember what the Milinkovic-Savic actual transfer fee was to Al Hilal?
I think it was around 50.
It was 50. So I think if you can get 50 for Milinkovic-Savic, then I think that even 20 to 25 for Casemiro, I don't think is like crazy. I'll say 25 is fair.
Yeah. It's funny because it's like two different lanes. It's the European fee, which will be like 10, like if he goes to Italy or maybe even a French club or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's Saudi, then yeah, I agree completely. 25 to 30, no doubt about it. I mean, Neymar moved for 95. I still lose sleep on that one. Like that's got to be up there. How is Neymar available for two of the worst transfers of all time? That I would never understand. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Casemiro, I would probably put around 25, 30. So
Yeah, yeah. So that means he does not agree with Floyd does not agree with the Rashford, Shaw, and Evans exits.
My apologies. Evans as well, yeah, but that's
thank.
about that one.
Evan was just understood. Like
Yeah,
no one wants to.
Yeah, that's kind of. I didn't even think about that. That's a given.
The thing that I miss about this season from last year is I really miss when they used to wheel out the Evans Kambwala back to. I really miss that partnership. That was my favorite one in the league last year. His face.
I still remember every time I think about Evans, I just think about that goal we conceded when Casemiro just dove in and completely missed the ball, and then Evans just kept backing up into the goal with our goalkeeper. I can't. Every single time that goal, it's haunts me to this day.
Yeah. So who else do you have moving on from United if it's not Rashford and Shaw?
So the two players that I have moving on besides those two, and these are one of them is another player kind of like Anthony. I think he's just got to go, but the other one just I think for tap of the league because I've got Sancho and Christian Eriksen. Sancho kind of the same thing as Anthony. I think he's burned all the bridges with the club. I think there's no way that he returns as a Manchester United player. Obviously he's on loan at Chelsea right now with the obligation to buy for 20 million and stuff. I like Erickson. I think he's been well for us, but I think that just tactically speaking, he's older. I don't think he has the legs to be able to, fit in the system with Ruben Amorim.
Yeah, so very quickly about Jadon Sancho. Me and Chad looked this up before you hopped on, actually, and it's a $20 million obligation to buy if Chelsea finish in the top 14. So we're pretty sure that that's going to be activated by the end of this season. So then we were looking at Christian Eriksen, and his contract is up next summer, so that'd be another like 1 year sort of contract exit, especially at 32 years old, or he's going to be 33 by the summer. So, I mean, I don't know what kind of fee you could possibly command off of that. I mean, that's probably where you're looking like high single digits to very low double digits, probably to like that 8 to 12 million sort of look, I'd think, for Christian Eriksen, even if you sold to someone like a Brentford or somewhere outside of the league. So I'd probably say just 10 million for Eriksen just for simplicity's sake. And then that 20 million for Sancho would be definite exits. Is there anyone else that maybe you're not thinking like we need to sell this guy, but you're kind of intrigued by the idea to get rid of him? Maybe even a bigger name, like maybe like a Bruno doesn't fit in this system or something like that.
The only one that comes to mind for me would be Mason Mount. I thought signing him was a little bit weird. He's obviously had a lot of injuries for us, so he hasn't really had opportunity to showcase his ability and get to that form he had in the last few years at Chelsea. But I would like to see how he does under Amorim before we make that decision. But that's the only one that really comes to mind. I was kind of on the fence about him when I was making my list.
Yeah, I think the only thing with Mount is you're just really not going to get anything close to what you paid for him. So you'd be...
Might as well just ride it out.
Yeah, you'd be having to accept taking a major loss, to justify like selling him for 20. I mean, I don't even know if you can get 30 million for Mount at this point, just because of the injury history he's had the last 2 years. But Ethan, you brought up a great point with Bruno Fernandes. I mean, I would not be automatically saying no to any Bruno Fernandes deals. Like up until this point, I would have been like, no chance, just wouldn't even look to sell him at all. Now, if someone came in for like, if someone came in for something north of, if someone came in with something north of 50 million, I feel like I would have to consider it. I feel like I would really consider it if I was United. And I know that sounds maybe a little low, but you got to think he's 30 years old at this point, and he's one of those midfielders that I don't know how he's going to age, because while he's so good on the ball and so good creatively, he also has a hell of an engine, right? And that's one of the other things that makes him so great. And I just don't know how that engine is going to age with him. So if you're getting 50 plus, definitely if you get over 60, I feel like I would be really inclined to sell him. But I don't think they will, just because of the Portuguese connection. Bruno's the club captain. He can be the link between the new manager and kind of the players, I feel like he's a good captain for United, even though people give him shit. So yeah, I wouldn't be desperate to sell him, but if the right offer came in, I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah, this upcoming summer, he'll still have 2 years left on his deal with an option to extend from there. So you could kind of, if you were again looking to sell him or trying to sell him to inflate his price, you could be like, hey, we have this guy under contract for 3 more years. He's our club captain, and it would take, like Chad kind of said, 60 to 70 million to really even turn United's head. So I don't think that would be one of them. I was thinking probably getting rid of Lenny Yoro. Like, he hasn't proven that he needs to be fit, or that he can be fit. I'm just kidding. But so in total with the things that we agreed on, and after kind of talking out some of the fees, we've now raised 95 million on top of. I think it'd be fair to say that they could have a negative 100 million net spend if we're kind of talking about next summer. So I think we kind of have around 200 million to play with. And now, are we thinking more like what direction are we kind of trying to go in as the club? Are we thinking we need good signings that are going to come in and play immediately, or are we looking to really refresh that sort of younger aspect, look for maybe cut price deals for younger players or players not in top 5 leagues, because United's kind of been doing a little bit of both, and that doesn't really seem to be the right formula right now. It's like we're going to somehow combine 30-year-old ready-to-win players with 19-year-old might be able to be good enough in a couple years type players.
I think it depends on the position. I think with a few of the positions, we definitely need a guy, like a big sign that can come in and make immediate impact. But then in some of the other positions, we just need a little bit more depth, maybe some younger guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start from the back. Obviously, I know how Floyd feels about Onana. Chad, what's your sort of valuation of? Because obviously, I mean, he's basically exactly what Amorim would want for his playing out of the back goalkeeper, and he's had a hot start to this season, so I don't foresee any need to address that position.
Yeah, I think it's real simple. I think over the past 12 months, he's probably been a top 5 keeper in the world, so I don't think there's any reason to even think about getting rid of him. I think distribution-wise, he's perfect for what Amorim is going to want. I think he's probably, this might be controversial, I actually think he's the best long ball accuracy passer of any goalkeeper in the world. Even better than Ederson, who is very good, but I think he's shines more in the short to medium distribution, whereas Onana's long passing, I think, is just insane.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, he's active enough to, like you said, step into that back three when they're in possession and almost play as that sweeper keeper type. So
Yeah, and he can also actually save shots, unlike Ederson, which I personally enjoy.
yeah, exactly. That helps. That definitely helps.
Yeah, so no need to really address the goalkeeper position. I mean, I guess if you really wanted to be weird, it could be like, oh, well, we could get this young guy backup goalkeeper, but no one really cares. It doesn't really matter that much. Starting with center backs. So if we get rid of the guys that we are thinking we're getting rid of, so what's the final decision on Lindelof? I guess we're keeping him. You also have to consider. You also got to consider though. I guess for like Lindelof, like what would he be down to re-sign a contract? Do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I think obviously the number one thing is going to be money, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Floyd, what are you thinking on that one?
That's a tough one because, like I said, I think if he goes to a little bit of a smaller team, I think he could be, a key player for them. He's just never really going to fit that role for Manchester United. So that's a good point to be brought up. But like I said, if he's willing to stay, I'd definitely keep him.
Yeah, because he's 30. He's 30 now. He turns 31 this summer, and I feel like that might be the part, especially with the World Cup coming up, that Sweden might actually qualify for. It might be one of those things where it's like, hey, nothing against you guys. I just want to be able to play every minute going into this World Cup, and I would rather try that at like a Nottingham Forest or even maybe at a smaller team in another league than United.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But at the same time, I don't know if, the Lindelof decision, whether he re-signs or not, I think United still are going to want to pick up at least one more center back, regardless.
Fairs. Yeah. So right now, the center backs in the club would be, after these sales or whatever are made, would be De Ligt, Lissandro, Lenny Yoro, and that's about it. So he really only have 3 true first-team center backs, unless there's some guy coming through the academy that's going to be the best player in the world, like there always is at United, I guess, that I don't know about yet. But it doesn't seem to be. So we're definitely going to have to sign at least one, maybe like one, and then like kind of a Johnny Evans type option, where it's like a guy that can just come and play spot minutes for us if we need it, which might just be Johnny Evans again. But let's start with that, definite we need a center back signing. So who is, starting with Chad, let's see, what is your center back signing fee? Who are we looking at?
Yeah, so I got kind of, for each one, I got 2 names I was kind of considering. I won't bore you guys to death with both of them. I'll just give you the one. I've got Wilfried Singo, 23-year-old center back from Monaco. Thing I love about him, physicality and athleticism, and the fact that he has that fluidity to kind of play as that right-sided center back in a back three. I think with the center backs we talked about, even if they end up keeping Maguire or Lindelof or Evans, the stuff that they're going to struggle with through the rest of this season is defending in wide areas. The only one of the center backs that I really would back to be able to do that is Martinez. Euro, the reason I wouldn't say it's a guarantee is just because we haven't seen it. But the rest of them, I don't think can defend in wide areas. De Ligt, it's been a struggle for him literally since his Ajax days. Has not been able to do that. Maguire, you don't want him really stepping out necessarily or stepping into wide areas. And then, like I said, Lindelof and Evans, just no. So Singo, that's kind of the reason. That's like a main reason why I want him. He brings the athleticism. Also, he's not going to be one of those guys who you bring him in and he's immediately going to be, all right, I need to start every single game. His age profile, 23, he's kind of that in between where he's, especially as a center back, he's young enough that he can still develop, but he's got experience. He's playing in the Champions League this year with Monaco, so scored a hell of a goal actually in their last game from a screamer from about 40 yards out. So, but yeah, I think he could be a really good signing for them.
Yeah, so Singo, 23 years old, born on Christmas, which is always nice. Still signed through 2028. So even if we're looking at next summer, that's still about 3 years left on his deal. Again, just kind of talking about the center back market in general. Lenny Yoro was listed on Transfermarkt at least as a 50 million euro player and was sold for 62 million euros. Right now, Singo is listed at 25 million. So are you thinking like 35 to 40 million type of range for Singo?
Yeah, I put him down as 40.
Yeah, so we're going 40 mil. And again, we're going to kind of get all these transfers out and then kind of decide, how to use our 200 million from there. So Floyd, who's your center back option that you're bringing to the table?
Actually, when I was making my list, I don't really have any center back. Most of my options that I was looking at were on the wing and at the midfield. So I'm kind of gonna leave that to Chad.
Okay.
All right, looks like Singo's a new United player.
Can I give another alternative then, real quickly? The other guy I was considering was Joe Gomez, and I think that's more of that rotation type option. We talk about kind of the parallels between Arsenal, that recent rebuild Arsenal's gone through, and what United could be going through now. I think Gomez could be kind of that Gabriel Jesus, Zinchenko type of signing in the sense that he's not a star. He's not a guy who, when you reach your peak version of yourself, he's going to be playing every single game. But he's a guy who can kind of bridge the gap for the next year or two, and is not going to cost a whole lot of money. Like, I feel like he could be 20 to 25 million. He hasn't been in favor at all from Arne Slot. He's only played 2 games. He's come on as a sub twice in the Premier League this year, so I think he could be easily gettable as well. So that was kind of my thinking there.
Yeah, so we'll at least have that as an option. Obviously, Singo would take priority, but Joe Gomez is definitely someone that we need to keep as an option. So, Floyd, you said you didn't have any center back options. Were there any wing back options that we saw? Because, like I said, especially at left back with the fitness issues of both Luke Shaw and Malacia, that left wing back slot's definitely going to be up for grabs.
So yeah, I actually do have the one fullback up here. Very ambitious one, but one that I think we could get done. Chad won't be too happy to hear this one as a real
Alphonso Davies.
I definitely want to see us try and go for Alphonso Davies. I mean, he's going to be a free agent here. There's been some rumblings, some rumors that before Ten Hag got sacked that we were beginning to start talking with him. I mean, we could definitely attract him. I mean, obviously Real Madrid, biggest club in the world. Everybody wants to go there, but with the season they're having, maybe he wants to come to the Premier League, and obviously he'd be a free transfer as well. So I'm really hoping that that's somebody that we can get in. It'd be an amazing signing, especially in the system with Amorim, because you look at how he's been at Bayern Munich, one of the best attacking fullbacks in the world, if not the best. And in the 3-back system, if he ends up running that, he'll have even more defensive cover behind him and have more freedom to go up and down the wing. So that's definitely someone I would really hope that we can start to make moves for in the summer.
I'm right there with you, Floyd. He was my number 1 top target for you guys at that left wing back too. And I gotta say, I think there's probably a real chance because I don't think Madrid are going to be in any hurry to get rid of Ferland Mendy. He just signed a contract extension through 2028, and if I'm Davies, I'm not looking to move to a club where I get it. Real Madrid, they got Aura or whatever the hell the kids are calling it these days, but I don't know if he is in a rush to move to a club to be a backup when he's a guaranteed starter right now at, obviously a club that's not at the same level as Madrid, but damn near. I mean, Bayern's not that far off. So I would be surprised to see him take a step back like that. That's why I think United could really be in play for it. I think the other thing is kind of similar to how United got the Lenny Euro deal done is they're going to be able to be way more desperate than Real Madrid. Real Madrid will not be desperate for the signing, I don't think. Whereas I could see United basically being like, hey, here's a blank check. You tell us how much money we have to pay you, because we can justify it because you will be a free transfer. So, hey, do you want $300,000 a week, like something ridiculous like that? I could see it happening, no doubt.
Yeah. So I really like that. Like Chad was kind of alluding to, it kind of cut out a little bit, but what I assume you said is like he's already playing at a huge club like Bayern. So it's not like he's super club hunting or being like, I need my huge move. Like I need to go bigger and badder. I just need to go somewhere where I'm going to get paid a crap ton of money and I'm going to play all the time. He's still, I think me and him were born the same year. So he's still only 24. Jury's still out as to who's had the better career so far, but he's still only 24, so still, I mean, that could be a player that if everything goes right could be at United for 10 years, and so even, like you said, if you're throwing 300,000 pounds a week at him, even like, God forbid, something even bigger than that, that could be something that's locking down that entire left wing back slot for basically the entire tenure of Amorim and maybe even beyond him. So I really, really like that shout. Chad, was there any alternative that you had?
Yeah, but just real quickly on Davies, the other thing is he's also versatile enough to play in a back four very easily.
Yeah.
So, if there's either a coaching transition or a system transition, whatever, he'll be able to continue to keep his value no matter what. The other guy I was thinking about for left wing back, this one's kind of more of a rogue shout and not really a United type of transfer.
Kieran Tierney?
But Nuno Tavares has had a really
another Arsenal legend.
Yeah, exactly. He's had a really good start to the season at Lazio. 8 assists in his first 8 league games.
Got sent off the other day.
Well, we'll leave that part out. But super attacking. You talked about how Amorim, and I think really any system that plays a back three, really, I mean, any system at all, back three or back four, you're going to lean towards one side when it comes to progressing. And I think with United, if they end up leaning towards that left-hand side, then Tavares is a guy who can play left wing back essentially as a left winger all the way on the touchline. Has Premier League experience, maybe didn't have the best time in the Prem with Arsenal and then his quick spell with Nottingham Forest. But I think it'd be a risk to pay $30 million, which is I think what it would cost to get him out of Lazio. So I could see it not happening, but if you don't end up getting Davies and you're like, hey, we need some cover, but we don't want to break the bank, I could see Tavares being an option.
Yeah, so Nuno Tavares, he's an interesting one because you can definitely see the talent, and even at Arsenal, he kind of had like a month and a half that year that we were fighting for top four when we, of course, didn't end up getting it. There was a weird time where he actually was like a pretty okay left back. He was only brought into Arsenal for £8 million. So right now he's technically owned still by Arsenal. He's on loan at Lazio, but it says obligation to buy if certain conditions were met. It seems like those conditions aren't truly public, but considering what he's been doing so far, I mean, I'd assume that those conditions would probably be met. Might be able to disqualify him for this summer, but maybe a future option for United. But I really like that idea that it's like he can just play as a left winger. So kind of like what people don't know that Frimpong does. It's like, oh, well, he's a right back, so he could play right back for any club in the world and play in a back four. It's like, no, it's not really how it works. And Nuno Tavares is maybe the worst 1v1 defender I've ever seen of someone that athletic. So, yeah, that'd be an option. But Alphonso Davies obviously would be the prize. So moving a little bit to a different part of the pitch, center mid honestly seems to be a weirdly deep place for United if they're only going to play with a middle two in there. But is there any center mid options, Floyd, that you were looking at for United, either in that sort of destroyer role or that sort of box-to-box role?
Yeah, I have two. And going back to Chad talking about the center backs, if you want to be really technical, my first one, he could slot into the center back role as well. But the two I was looking at were Quinton Timber out of Feyenoord and Musa from AC Milan. I think these two guys are players that aren't going to come in and immediately be demanding to play, but they're really good depth players for us. And you look at the profile for both of these guys. They're guys that have a lot of athleticism, both very fast players. They cover a lot of ground during their games, which is something that we'll need in the two-man midfield, especially with the intensity of the Premier League. So these are definitely two guys that I'd like to see come in. Obviously for depth with Musa, and Timber could even have the potential ability to be starting for us. And obviously, like I said, he can also play center back as well if we need him. And both of these guys aren't too expensive. With Timber going around 40 million and Musa going about 15.
Chad, what do you think of those shouts?
I actually love the Timber shout. The Timber shout is really good because I think he has that profile to where he can actually play either one of those positions. He can be the destroyer or he can kind of be the box-to-box guy. I mean, he's got 4 goals right now for Feyenoord this season. Granted, it's the Eredivisie. Everyone scores at least 5 in the league. But he's had a really good, 2.5 years, I feel like. When Feyenoord won the title 2 years ago, he was really instrumental for them and then kind of carried that on last season and this year. So I like that shout a whole lot. I do have some. It's funny. I think Floyd kind of more looked to give depth to that box-to-box role, and I was looking more at the destroyer role. The first guy, only because I think the only real destroyer they have right now is Ugarte. Casemiro, obviously, in name only, but I just, as we said, we both think he's going to get moved on, and also I just don't think he's, rangy enough at this point to play in a two-man midfield.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I think you've seen, in the 4-2-3-1 United have played. You've seen the struggles there. So the first guy that I'm gonna, I've literally linked this guy to every club we've talked about every single episode. But Angelo Steeler from Stuttgart for 40 million is not a bad deal at all. And the nice thing about him is he's more of that destroyer type, but he also has a really good passing range and he has a lot of mobility in the midfield as well. So he's like almost a guy who would be a destroyer while playing in a box-to-box role as well. So I like that about him. The other guy I thought of is Florentino Luis, Benfica defensive midfielder, 25 years old. He is literally just a defensive machine. Tackles, interceptions, blocks, clearances, all that stuff. That's all he does all game long, and he's damn good at it. Been out of favor for whatever reason by Bruno Lage, but we all know that's because Bruno Lage is the worst manager in the world. So I could see either one of those guys. And the thing with Luis, he's probably looking at 20 to 30 million just because he's out of favor right now and he's at a selling club. So I don't think either one of those would be guaranteed starters or necessarily guys who would be mad about not playing a whole lot. So I'm with Floyd on that one. But maybe guys who are slightly more proven than Musa, who is probably the most projecty of the 4 guys that we're talking about in this position. So.
Yeah, for sure. The thing, my concern about Yunus Musa is that I've seen this dude play for the United States a million times now, and it's just he seems like a lot of talent that can go very, very wrong if he's not having a good game. Like he's a guy that when you see him playing well, is he comes deep, picks up the ball, and he can just explode through the midfield, sort of like a guy we talked about either last week or the week before on the podcast, Chad, like a Mateus Cunha, where it's like he just bounces off of players, runs by everybody, no one can touch him when he has the ball. But then sometimes that turns into, hey, I think I can do this, and then I get hit by Rodri, and now our team is so stretched out that now we just conceded a goal. And again, not saying that stuff can't be improved upon, because I think he's only like 21 or 22, but he continues to, if he continues to improve, I don't think that that'd be the best option for right now, but definitely a future one to watch. And I always want to see an American do well. But I think taking kind of one of each from your guys', because like you said, Chad, you kind of focused on that destroyer role, whereas Floyd kind of had that more box-to-box sort of role looked at. So I think a combination of one of Timber and maybe Steeler or Florentino Luis, Chad, if you had to really stake your claim on one of them, who would you say?
I would say Luis because he's going to be. I think Steeler's the better player, but I would go with Luis because I think he is going to be more of that immediate Ugarte type of replacement. He fits that mold a bit more, and it's going to be more comfortable being a depth player.
Okay, yeah. So I like that. So now we've kind of have an idea that we're going to go like Singo, Davies, Florentino Luis, and then Quentin Timber. Now, so are we just looking at wide forwards now? Because I can't imagine a third window in a row where United goes and spends big money on a center forward. So I would assume that our last position that we're going to be looking at is a wide forward, correct? Yeah, for Chad's side, we're looking for that Rashford replacement.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Cook us up, Floyd. Let us know.
Right, so moving on to the front three. Obviously, as you discussed earlier, Ethan, in the Amorim system, he likes to play with the wingers coming inside, playing that in more inverted role. Something I think Rashford will actually be very good at. Put that on the record. But the two I've got here, another bigger one. First one to be Rafael Leao. Obviously, he's not having a great time at AC Milan right now. He's having a lot of disagreements with the new coach they've got there, and he's not playing. And I mean, we'll be honest here. He's one of the best players in the world. It's never good for a club when one of the best players in the world is having a disagreement with the head coach. And as we've seen over the past few years in Italy, with Osimhen, being the biggest one, there's been a lot of disagreements between Serie A managers and their players that usually lead to them going to different clubs. So I think he probably is going to be on the way out here soon. And with him having these disagreements with the coach, maybe we can even get him a little bit cheaper than we would have. And I think he fits perfectly. He gives us a lot more competition in that role. Well, not competition. I mean, he's going to play immediately. But it makes the other players around him a little bit better. And if we were to move on from Rashford, I mean, it's a perfect replacement there.
Yeah. So the only concern that I have with someone like Leao is, for me, I'm just clearing out the entire club for Garnacho. I really am. Like, I don't like the idea of bringing in a left winger just because it's like to me, I think Garnacho is probably the best young forward in the entire league. I don't think it's particularly close. I mean, because Cole Palmer this is only his second year, people's like he's young, but I think he's an '01 birthday, so he's like 23 years old. Like, as far as like the teenager, really truly up and coming types, I think he's the best wide forward. Definitely wide forward, but probably the best forward in the league. Like, guys like, you'd have to throw out a name like a Evan Ferguson to get someone who's even close to the same level at a similar age profile as Garnacho. And so that's the only thing that I don't like, because the other thing you don't want Garnacho or Leao to turn into is like, oh, well, let's play him on the right then, where he can just like run down the line and swing it across. So that's my only concern with Leao. But who was your other option that you were thinking of, if not Leao?
The other one I've got is the other one is Wilfried Gnonto from Leeds.
Willy Gnonto.
I think he's a great player. He in the opposite to Rafael Leao, he's less of an inside forward, more of like an inside winger. Really creative player, likes to come in, likes to take people on. A lot of dribbling, a lot of crossing. I think that's something that we've really lacked. All of our wingers, besides maybe Diallo, are kind of like these inside forward type of profile players. And I think that having someone, maybe we're in a game against a team that likes to sit deep, like a Burnley or an Everton. Having someone that's a bit more creative, I think goes a long way in helping us, especially if we're looking to compete for titles and whatnot. I think he's a great player. He's one of the best players for Leeds. He's done amazing for Italy, and I mean he's not going to cost too much as well. But the only issue is obviously with the rivalry between Leeds and Manchester United. Maybe it's difficult to convince him to come over, but I'd love to see him in United jersey.
Yeah, and the Wilfred Nanto, the thing that I really, really like, the two things I really, really like about that is, one, he's 20, so he kind of fits that age profile of what we were talking about, and also kind of going along with Chad's point that he's made a couple times, he's not going to walk into Old Trafford and be like, start me right now or I'm going to start getting pissed off. So you have both those things going for you. And also, his primary position is the right wing, and he's more of a go-at-you and create type of player. Whereas guys like Garnacho, Leao, they like to create for themselves, and if they also create for guys around them, that's just more of a bonus. And especially, again, if you're keeping Rashford's definitely not a creator. He's more of a goal-scoring winger. So having someone like Willy Nanto who likes to just really run at players, create, and get booked, which is also a good thing. He's been booked in 4 of his 12 appearances so far in the championship for Leeds, which for a winger is absolutely outrageous. He still has a contract that expires in 2028, but he's still only listed as 16 million euros. So, again, even if you account for that rivalry, I think you're kind of topping out his price tag at about like 25, maybe 30 million, which is a much better sort of valuation profile of someone who's going to come in, listen to everything Ruben Amorim tells him to do, is not going to have his own sort of maverick idea. He's a very competitive player from what I remember. As Leeds, I'll just kind of leave that kind of where it is, kind of like a Bruno Fernandes type of, if shit isn't going my way, then I'm going to get pissed off. But not like in a way where it's like I'm going to quit, but in a way it's like I'm just going to keep trying to make something happen until it does. And I really, really like Willy Nanto. I'm kind of shocked he hasn't gotten a move yet. So I really like that addition to our sort of short list. Chad, who were your wide options that you were kind of looking at?
First off, I love the Nyanto one. I really could see a nice partnership with him and Dalot. You know, Dalot kind of like to work inside and out. Nyanto, like you said, can kind of play with chalk on his boots, but can also kind of come inside a bit. So I really like that addition. I'm going to go ahead and just suggest one of mine then, just because I like Nyanto so much. I think Brian Bomo is a really nice option from Brentford. Probably going to be around 60 million, but 25 years old, Premier League proven. I think he really is the epitome of like what those two inside forwards are going to be. Like a guy who can go at people, can be very direct, can be powerful, can dribble with power, can beat you with technical ability, and can finish and score goals as well. So, I mean, I think he already has like 8 goals in the Premier. I think he's 3rd in Premier League goals this season. So, he's had a really good start to the season. I've always been a fan of him ever since Brentford came up, really. So, like, even when Tony was out last year, Brian Bomo had like he borderline, replaced Tony's goal scoring output. So I really have liked him a lot. I think him at around 60 million, he could be a really good signing for United.
Yeah, and I think the other part of Mbeumo that's kind of underrated, I think he's a really underrated passer. Like, there's a lot of times when Brentford are having to play like these like 40, 50-yard balls like around the corner and stuff between him and Wissa. And I think he's able to play those really well. And so when you sort of equate that to like crossing and stuff like that, when he's going to be in those sort of inside areas where you're not crossing from super wide, it's not just like a big whipped ball into a space. It's like I got to pick out a specific player, like making that back post run or cutting across the face of their defender. I think he would be really, really good for that. And I think if we look more like Nanto and Mbeumo, I think that kind of combined would sort of be under 90 million, which I think will be sort of more the profile money-wise that we're going to be looking at. So if we kind of made our final list based on the guys that we were really thinking, I think it would definitely be Singo, Davies, Florentino Luis with Timber, and then it would be Mbeumo and Nanto. And I got to do some quick maths on this to see what the final price tag would be. But is there anything that you guys think right now is missing in that that United either doesn't have, or do you think that they would need as it transitions to this new Amorim system?
No, I think with those signings we talked about, they're kind of like you kind of alluded to earlier. I think the squad actually fits a 3-4-3 a little bit better than maybe a lot of people realize at first. So I'm pretty optimistic about it with those signings we talked about.
Yeah, and then also what I was kind of wondering is like who do you think is gonna be the biggest beneficiary of these players that we're keeping with United? Like, who do you think is going to go from one level to another just based off of this new system, or even just getting Ten Hag out?
I think that probably the biggest beneficiary of would probably be Ugarte. I mean, when he first came up and started to get on the radar of all the top European clubs, it was under Emery. So, only being under him with more quality players around him can only mean something better for him, I think.
Chad?
Yep, I agree with the Ugarte. The only other one I could think would maybe be Mason Mount. He has a lot of track record proven as that inside forward in a 3-4-2-1-ish kind of under Tuchel's Chelsea. So I feel like maybe a possible resurgence from him, but I wouldn't hold your breath on it.
Yeah, so I just crunched the numbers, and do you guys remember what the exact number was that we kind of gave ourselves to spend? We raised 95, and then
195 was the budget,
and the exact price with all of our valuations is 195 million euros. So that's 40 for Singo. Davies in on a free. I mean, obviously the money you're going to have to pay in wages for Davies is going to exceed that, but just as far as straight transfer fees, Florentino Luis for about 25 million, Quentin Timber for 40. I think kind of between those two guys, you'd get them for 65, kind of however it would shake out as far as specific numbers. And then Embuemo and Nanto kind of in for a combined 90. Again, however those numbers kind of shake out is how it ended up. And so I think that makes a lot better United team, and one that not only has that sort of new system that they're now able to play in, but also has a new mix of guys that either aren't at that age profile yet where they're going to be, those big guys that are going to be demanding this, that, and the other. But they also still do have proven winners in there, even though they have a lot of guys that haven't done it at the top level. Guys like Alphonso Davies has won a ton of trophies. Quentin Timber has always been in the mix in the Eredivisie. Luis has been in the mix in Portugal. Singo now, like Chad said, playing in the Champions League. Embuemo and Nanto would kind of be the only guys really truly making like a step up as far as expectations day to day. But those are guys that we kind of already agreed on. It'd be like not like key players from the jump, and they can kind of grow alongside the club. Two of the younger players, and honestly, forward player, their entire front line is going to kind of have to grow along with Amorim anyway. So sort of piecing that together until everyone hits their prime, I think, is going to be a key aspect of this rebuild anyway.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely. And the thing about Buemo and Yonto is they both have Premier League experience. So while they may not have experience on the continent or at the top level, they do have it in the league. So I like that.
Yes. All right. So with our final rebuild, all right. So Floyd's already sort of shared his expectations for the rest of this season. Okay. But if you had to say, Floyd, at the end, this time next year, we will say this about Man United, both the squad and Amorim. We will say Man United are what?
I'm very excited about Amorim. I think that he will be. I think he might be the one to finally get us out of this little drought. So I think by this point next year, that I think that I think that we'll be talking about a team that, kind of like how Arsenal was a few years ago, back on the come up, with a good young manager that's finally getting backing from the fans, and I think that next year at the very minimum we have to be competing for the Champions League spot.
Chad, do you agree with that assessment?
100%. I think the rest of this year, they should still have European expectations, but I don't think it's a necessity. Probably honestly will make it easier for them the year after to compete for the Champions League if they don't get European football this year, which I know for United is always a big deal. But taking that step back, maybe to then take that next step forward, I could see for sure. So yeah, challenging for top 4 next year, I think is definitely realistic.
Yes, well, I think that they're going to be the greatest team of all time. They're going to win the league invincible, and if they don't do that, then Amorim is a failure, is what I think.
You're all of United. You're United Twitter right now.
Exactly.
Just impersonated United Twitter.
So I wanted to, reach out again. Thank you to Floyd for being our first guest on here. Really appreciate it. I thought we had a lot of good analysis, a lot of a different perspective, obviously coming from a fan of the club that we're talking about. And you guys at home, let us know. Did you enjoy this? This 3-man format, getting other guys involved. 2, did you like this sort of rebuild format where we kind of look at deep dive into a club and sort of pick it apart from the inside and say what do they need? How does the new manager sort of change it? Please just let us know everything. And guys, I really appreciate it. I think this was a good one. I really think this was a good one. And we will see you guys for episode 14 next week.